Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shankari Goldstein, host of the Inspiring Minds series for the Mind and Life Institute. So glad you can join us today for our episode on how to move from climate distress to climate action. For those of you who are new to Mind and Life, we believe that many of today's problems, from growing mental health concerns to social and racial injustice to the climate crisis, originate in the human mind. Building on our 35-year legacy, we explore the potential of the mind to solve such problems. Each episode of Inspiring Minds explores solutions to real-world issues through the lens of research and contemplative wisdom. In November, we looked at mindfulness approaches to healing and recovery, bringing together a leading scientist and a yoga of recovery teacher. Today, we'll explore steps that we can take to best cope with uncertainty and build resilience in the face of the climate crisis. We'll look at the latest research on the science of behavior change and the role that individuals can play in influencing larger systems to adopt climate-friendly practices. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank Mind and Life supporters for their generosity, as well as all of you who've contributed during this registration process to this program. Your generosity is deeply appreciated. We're going to open our episode with a contemplative meditation and intention setting and an offering from Alyssa Eppel. Alyssa, if you'd like to turn your camera on and join us now. Alyssa is a professor and a vice chair in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of California, San Francisco. She studies how stress resilience and mindfulness interventions can protect health and promote thriving. She also studies transforming climate distress into climate action. She's a member of the National Academy of Medicine. She's the president of the Academy of Behavioral Medicine Research and a co-chair of the Mind and Life Institute Steering Council. I totally enjoy being in community with Alyssa. So I really hope that we can all enjoy this balancing experience. Joining us from Costa Rica, please welcome Alyssa.
Thank you, Shankari. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I am so honored and excited to be here with all of you who have logged in with us and to be speaking with Rinpoche, who I have learned so much from. I've had the honor of being at Serenity Ridge, Ligmincha, for practice. So wherever you are, welcome. And I just want to acknowledge, how amazing it is. We're just so frustrated with Zoom and being electronic, but just this ability to be connected right now across so many states and countries. So first, I'm going to acknowledge the land that I'm sitting on right now, and you might acknowledge the land that you are on. I'm in Nosara, Costa Rica, and I'd like to acknowledge the ancestors, the first settlers of this Nicoya Peninsula, which is a blue zone, who were the Corotega people. They still live here peacefully. And Costa Rica is truly a unique example of a place where settlers did not colonize and displace and murder the indigenous people. It's thought to be in part because there was no extraction and fighting and competition over controlling land and the earth. And there still today is a full ban on all extraction of the earth in Costa Rica, despite the rich resources. This country is the first in the world also to double their forest coverage in the last decade. It's 50% forest. So it is both with awe and gratitude that I speak to you from here at Blue Spirit, Costa Rica. And next, I'd like to acknowledge the land where I am from, where I grew up in Northern California, on the unceded territories of the Ohlone and the Esselen people. Their population was dramatically reduced through war, murder, violent colonization. And this has had lasting effects in our country and many others, shaping our culture and minds toward accepting these power hierarchies and the brutal inequities that we've learned to think are normal. Lastly, I would just want to acknowledge the critical role of Indigenous wisdom in caring for and preserving nature in ways that we need to now even more embrace and relearn. So next, I would love to have us sit with some moments together, really feeling the land beneath our feet, and that connects us. So please start to get comfortable for about 4 minutes in your seat. And you can sit or lie down. And let's take one first deep breath together. As you settle in, please breathe through your nose very gently, but deeply, low in your lungs and belly. And let yourself take these steady and slow breaths, so gentle that you can barely feel them. When you notice your thoughts, let them soften and float like clouds passing in the sky. Can you let your body feel even more supported and heavy and relaxed in your seat? Connecting down to the earth beneath you. You might imagine plants, dirt, and the layers of the earth, what they look like beneath you, the living earth. You might imagine energetic roots from the base of your body projecting into the earth. Grounding us. The elements of the earth are in this body, and we are connected through these elements. As you inhale, feel the sensation of air as you breathe in through your nose. And as you exhale, soft flow of air from your body toward the earth's body of air. Wherever you are, our air is connected. The earth has yet one body of air. You might think of a body of water in your head, or you might hear waves or a waterfall. This water is in us. Our cells are full of the earth's water, 60% of this body. The earth's bodies of water are all connected. One ocean. You might imagine an energetic line connecting you to each one of us here today, connected through these elements, through our expanded mind, our consciousness. Through our common love of this one earth, this one life. You might extend some gratitude for this planet, allowing us to exist and feel wellness and love. And our ability to not just be supported by the earth, but to give back in some way. This body also holds so much tension, worry, wanting. Breathe into wherever you feel pressure building. And let this earth support you even more. We'll end with a short vow from Joanna Macy. I vow to myself and to each one of you to commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. That grounding meditation, my Virginia winter body appreciates the connection to water. So thank you so much. It's a wonderful way to open our conversation today. And as I just shared, I'd love to acknowledge that I'm joining from the ancestral and unceded land of the Monacan Indian Nation here in Central Virginia. These people have resided in this land for over 10,000 years. And at Mind and Life, we continue to bring these messages of awareness and honor the presence of all Indigenous people and the need for change in colonial settler societies. We do this to find ways to cultivate relationships with our global majority and disenfranchised communities, as well as building trust and taking action towards healing and repair. So for those joining us live, if you feel inclined, please feel free to share in the virtual chat where you're joining from so we can build our virtual community together. So I'd like to introduce our other speaker that's joining us today, Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. If you can join us, turn on your camera. He is the founder and spiritual director of Lingmincha International and is one of only a few masters of the Bon Dzogchen tradition presently living in the West. Rinpoche is known for his ability to make Tibetan practices easily accessible to Western students. He's a highly respected and beloved teacher to students throughout the United States, Latin America, Europe, Asia. Rinpoche is the author of 10 books, including Awakening the Luminous Mind and Spontaneous Creativity. And maybe you can talk more about his books here at the end. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today. I have some questions for each of you, but I also hope that you'll take the opportunity to be in conversation with one another throughout our time together. And we will hopefully, fingers crossed, have space towards the end of our conversation for a few group public questions, but it could be a great conversation, so we never know. So Alyssa and Rinpoche, I'd love to begin with asking what prompted each of you to pursue the work that you're doing now, and maybe Rinpoche, as a father, you can start, is there a personal connection to how our youth may be facing their own moral injury in the face of climate change, and how they can best cope with the feelings of anxiety and despair? We'd love to just hear a little bit of your personal journey in this conversation today, being a father, being a parent.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here to join with Elisa. And thank you, Shankari, for wonderful start. So as a father, of course, as every parent, our job is to worry about the children. So as a father, of course, I think about our son, and also when I think about our son and also his future and every future of every children on the earth, I do feel that, of course, there are a lot of them are educated and they're concerned about the future and earth and environment, but there are also a lot who is not aware enough and not connected enough. They're very much into very materialistic approaches of the views of the world, the game, technology, and so on. So somehow it's more than a children. I think it's a bigger picture that I do feel the fundamental problem is here. It's our disconnectedness to ourselves, because in the sense what we're really doing is we're looking for ourselves. We're looking for happiness. We're looking for some sense of purpose. And the way we are looking is we are looking outside ourselves. And it feels like there's so much lost souls and lost selves and disconnected and looking for some purpose and meaning and joy in the world outside ourselves. As a result of that, we always want the mantra is more of everything, more love, more material, more things. As a result of asking more and more, that you cannot have more of stuff in the world unless you create damages and cost of environment, sickness, diseases, and all the disharmonies are what we are facing on the globally. It's a cost that what we are always wanting more outside, and that completely not realizing that the richness of connection of inside and to the nature, it's already fulfilling so much the nature can give, so much your connection to yourself can fulfill. So I think this is absolutely, in terms of the climate issues and everything, I do feel like it's really important to address this issue of connection to ourselves and the natural element, where we can already fulfill so much richness and joy, happiness, and find so much things what we are looking for, rather than needing more stuff outside. And in the end short, it will be in some sense of coming to a conclusion of needing not much, simplifying life, needing less in order to be full.
Love that. Thank you so much. Alyssa, can you perhaps share a little bit of your personal journey and how it's relevant to this conversation today? And I'm sure we're going to talk more about the materialistic aspects of this journey, as Rinpoche just referenced throughout the conversation.
Yes, we should talk about causes. So I am relatively new to doing work in the climate area. And I think part of that is, realizing that we need to work on what's most important. And we can't be so siloed in thinking about what we do and, have an identity of I do this, because we all need to now find a way to kind of incorporate how we're going to include caring for the earth in what we do or outside of what we do. So I've tried both. I started trying to learn what can I do from my lane, from my skill set as a psychologist, as a behavioral scientist, that can be helpful. And there was just, years of beautiful work before me of psychologists explaining why we don't see the climate crisis. It's so far into the future. It feels like it's not here. There's not a single person to blame. We have, there's no distinct entity. And of course, it feels threatening. And we know what happens with our attention when something's too threatening. We change it. We have good defenses to avoid. And so all of that was fascinating me. And I started building a course to change people's carbon footprint and realizing, emotion regulation is important. That's clearly part of engaging in this problem. And through then 2020 happened, and there were these, I no longer became just a privileged person planning and plotting and getting to read and talk to scholars. I became a body on this earth coping with acute disasters and the fires in California, the smoke, the heat waves. It was here, and it was only going to get worse. And we have a lot of uncertainty, but we are certain that we are set up for more and more intense climate disasters, more heat. And so that kind of overwhelming realization how late we are and can what I do have an impact really brought me down. And I really froze up and felt that what I could do would not help enough. And I certainly stalled on my project, thinking it wasn't good enough, talked to many people, everyone has a different opinion, focus on this and that. And so where I've come to now is I have more tools to not go to that dark place. I have come to the best project I can make, knowing that I am one person and I can only offer one little piece, but it can add up. And even though I am just one person, I am still one person, and I can do something in my lane. And so I have found tremendous meaning and purpose when I'm working on climate. I've also learned it's not, we'll talk more about specific projects, but whatever you do can help. It turns out awareness raising is one of the most important things we can do, convening meetings, having these discussions. And so that's what I meant about outside of what we do in our jobs, that there's an ability to be a catalyst around conversations. So it has been a long journey. We're all on this journey together. I'm not the only one with climate distress and struggling with will what I do matter? We are putting, I had a turning point that I'll talk about a bit later, but it was a book called You Matter More Than You Think. It was by climate scientist Karen O'Brien, who is a Mind and Life SRI speaker. She's at University of Oslo, and she left the technical piece of her climate science, working on, technology of understanding carbon change, to actually understanding that it's the social change that we need. And how do we create this paradigm shift? So just to tease you, I'll use the word, there's another reality, which is quantum social change. And so beyond what we can see, we can actually understand a model of how we can really change. So I feel so kind of more hopeful and empowered and feel more purpose in my work now, understanding that, but also that if we can all help, together embrace that, that model, that it will lead to a social tipping point. And that's what we need. We can create the conditions, we cannot control outcomes, but we are part of this social tipping point toward a dramatic transformation that we all know we need.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Alyssa. And we're getting comments in the chat around, the importance of having this heart-oriented and this mindfulness perspective, these practices. And one of my personal spiritual teachers actually speaks often of the body being this recreational vehicle that we're just driving around temporarily, and we have to tune up this vehicle, right? We have to give ourselves oil changes. We have to monitor the body, monitor the spirit. And it's really the positive embodied practices that we put in to our body, and the heartfulness. And the more we do this, the more that suffering is released. So I'm wondering if, to reflect back to what you just shared, Alyssa, can you both speak about the feeling of emptiness that people often face and what they truly need to feel happy? Rinpoche, maybe you can begin for us.
Sure. So as Elisa was saying, carbon change to social change, I think social change has to start with somewhere. Everybody has you don't change the group unless you change one person. So in order to change one person, you have to change who that person is. You have to look at yourself. This question about, as I said earlier, that the deep sense of loss, so many lost souls and lost selves looking for something and to fulfill themselves. I mean, whatever the nature disasters, the environmental problems are there, it's be created as a result of finding for ourselves. So we don't have to pollute so much to find ourselves. People found themselves meditating in the cave without having anything, not even having a running water. So we go too far. I think during pandemic last year, 2020, and you begin to see it. it's a lockdown, right? The term that we use is a lockdown. I call it, it's a personal retreat. It's like a free up. We have been free up. Everybody was looking for holiday, time out for work, not going to work, not going to highway. You got it. Enjoy it rather than calling it lockdown and suffering about it. And then the sky become more clearer, the air become more purer, the animals start to come out, the places where they can never see the mountain. In some places in India, they could finally see the mountain. There's so much outcome, positive outcome, doing less, creating less, pollute. And so this, all the things, the mood of doing things in order to search. People have changed so much, quit job, remote learning, remote working, and prioritizing their different. People have finally because of, I think that this virus has really changed society. It will never be back same in terms of the environment. I think probably we have to thank the coronavirus. Probably this has affected so much of environment effect than probably many things what we talk about. So I think it began to just personal story a little bit. Recently somebody lended me a camper. I love camping out and RV, and I thought of getting one, and biking and everything. And more realized last 2 years, I don't need a bike. I mean, I don't want to carry a bike. I have to worry about the bike, and I have to pack the bike. I just have 2 legs. This is perfect. Just go hours and hours and hours without thinking about, did you have to worry about one stuff you don't have to take care of about. So with the camper, it was so nice. But then I realized I do not need a camper. I mean, the nature is there. When I go out there, I just enjoy fully be with the nature, then taking care of the camper. And camping places I go in the US, in this country, especially in this country here, I mean, these people are like incredible, these big campers, and another car, another bike, and so much stuff they carry whole their life to go into the nature. I just don't get it. Instead of being fully with the nature and enjoying so much what nature has to offer, rather than taking care of this stuff. So I think in the end, what I'm trying to say is this deep sense of emptiness, instead of recognizing how full it is, how rich it is, how much you can get out of it, then seeing it's empty and then trying to feel that something else from outside. That's, I think, the fundamental problem here.
So is the emptiness an illusion?
So,
not real?
So I mean, from Buddhist point of view, when we think about emptiness, we say philosophically, we say everything is inherently doesn't exist. Inherently, they are not existing there. So we impute them, we label them. So it's more important than, I think, more important is ourselves, who we are. So this sense of empty, what I'm really trying to say here, all the pollution, climate problem is the result of that sense of feeling empty and trying to fill that up with the stuff. When you need so much more, borrowing money from China and then buying Chinese stuff, and I mean, those kind of things. It's a continuation of trying to fulfill something inside which is empty. That costs us a lot, rather than feeling you need less. You don't need a camper. You don't even need a bike. You have a leg, to walk and hike and whatever. I mean, if you can minimize more and more, simplify more and more life, and try to draw our attention to more inside ourselves, know more ourselves, I think that will change one person, and that will change society. That will change carbon imprint.
Love this. I love that deeper connection to the fullness. And it's really just an ask of us as humans to just become more connected to our natural surroundings and our planet and the earth. And Alyssa, can you talk about, your feelings on this positive effect? Can you speak about the distinction between pleasure and joy, dopamine versus serotonin? And what is the research telling us about the impact of bringing joy to others?
It's a good question. When Rinpoche, when you say, we need to fill ourselves. That is directly describes that loop that we get on with wanting, craving, and addiction, and that we feel we want to, that we need the immediate pleasure to feel better, to relieve how this kind of feeling bad in the body, or bringing this the hedonia in, this quick relief burst of pleasure from consuming. And it could be food, it could be buying things, it could be drugs, but it's this consuming something outside of our body that we think is going to fill us. And that is driven by dopamine. And we know that neurochemistry so well. We all are experience that, the little bling of pleasure from consuming something, but that of course can get hijacked to feeling that we're not well and wanting to get rid of that anhedonia by consuming more and more. And so we as a culture for sure are on the treadmill of needing to consume to feel full. And the other type of positive affect is love or joy, which is more regulated by serotonin. And the big distinction there is that you cannot buy it, you cannot consume it. It is really when your attention is realizing that you have love, that you have relationships, that you're having a meaningful or purposeful experience. So all of those things are subtle and long lasting and just different in the brain. We can't get addicted to that type of eudaimonic pleasure. So I almost think you've made it so beautifully clear and simple, Rinpoche. I feel like we need billboards that say, you are not empty. We need to break this illusion that we see and the cultural messages we're told that we need all of these things.
Yeah, so maybe I don't know much about this, when you're referring to serotonin, I was just looking as we are having conversation, I'm looking up in the dictionary. So in some sense, it feels like dopamine is something that more, it's high that you seek for. Serotonin is something that is already established. It's your more innate nature that if you recognize that, it's already there. We call it great perfection. Word great perfection means who you are is fully perfected. You have everything what you need. Like you have love, you have a joy, you have a peace, you have sense of completeness, you have sense of worthiness. Everything what you're looking outside in the cost of environment, you already have that inside yourself. If you recognize that, you can become a little bit high also without getting to high, but you can being high, being yourself.
Yes.
And I think in some sense, I was, saw on a YouTube that in Philadelphia, the street called, what is called Kensington Avenue, and the drug street. I mean, if you look at, I cannot believe in this such a rich, most powerful country, place like this exist. It's just hard to believe, heartbreaking.
I am in one of the wealthiest cities, San Francisco, and we just declared a whole area called the Tenderloin as a state of emergency. It's just so heartbreaking. There's so many deaths this year. One of the biggest reasons is from the opioid addiction. And with all of this wealth, so much suffering right side by side.
I have a question that came in from a participant. I think it might be relevant to where you all are at right now. And it's, one would hope that the climate crisis could be this big unifying event that crystallizes global understanding of our interconnection and our shared responsibility. But the extreme inequities and the power imbalances in our world speak to another reality. When countries like the United States and China continue to contribute to this crisis in vastly disproportionate ways, what hope do you both see for real progress in terms of action that is rooted for our shared humanity?
Elisa, please.
So So what hope do we have that at a countrywide level, we will have these changes?
And when there's two that are predominantly contributing, I think, to the vast majority of it.
It is a great question, and we have to hope that there'll be these, the multinational agreements better than COP, right? Much more bold. And I think one way we can see these diplomats that met at COP is disconnected from reality. They have different interests. They're going to move only this much and play this poker game and see how much the other country will move. And they're not they haven't spent this time actually existing in nature and being connected. And what Rinpoche was talking about as a first step, the very first step for healing, is to reconnect yourself with people in nature and reality. So these technocrats will not save us, period. We cannot rely on them. We are going down a path very quickly and very steeply. And so it's going to take transformational change. And so that means a change in public will massively that will change political will. It means we need the leaders, we need especially women leaders, working to get at those higher levels, and we need to be doing what we can at the highest level. And it may take tremendous climate suffering to get to these changes.
Well, I personally hope that, I keep the hope and I pray for it. And I also feel that sometimes as a human, we create these problems, and then we have these amazing conferences trying to resolve the problems. And we go on this playing back and forth games, But I think if we are not able to do it, the universe will do it. I don't think we have to worry so much about it, because it's like a virus. One little thing, we think we are so strong. We don't realize how weak we are, how unpredictable life we live. Just single one virus. So I think sometimes when we are not able to take care, the universe will, and maybe another virus will, and something will happen. And I think universe knows far better to survive itself than us. The problem is more us trying to survive in the universe. It's not the universe trying to survive. It's the world trying to survive. So we need to survive. So we might learn it hard way, but I think we will learn in some point.
Yeah, I love that you referenced, we keep having these conversations and conferences and discussions. And I know a part of the work that you do, Alyssa, is about building those bridges. And many of the conversations that we see happening around climate change lead to solutions that are technical, such as innovations to reduce carbon emissions. And why is it so important to begin to build these bridges and shift the conversation in the direction of behavior change? And might this relate to the research that you're doing personally or that you're seeing out there in the field?
This is a good question. We have the technology. There was an article published, we'll put on the website, by climate scientists saying we have a social agreement between scientists and politicians and policymakers that we do this work. We're public servants, we're publicly funded, so that you will act on it. The contract is broken. We do not need more climate science. We should stop. We should go on strike. And so I think, there's a lot of truth to that. Whether how then you turn your energy toward changing, creating political action is another question. But the behavioral and social science has not been completely, I would say it's in its infancy. We see the polarization, and our best social psychologists tell us how complex it is. They understand it, but they can't fix it. We would be out of this mess if we knew how to change attitudes and social norms more easily. So one important area of research is understanding from the individual to the social movement how to develop and cultivate the the perspective and understanding that what each individual does truly matters, that we need each other. Together is the most powerful world. We cannot do anything alone. Together, we can have contagious hope. We can have action and solutions. So the science of what I'm working on is trying to understand how to activate groups of people and build collective efficacy. So as a behavioral psychologist, my first mentor was Albert Bandura, who we also lost this year, along with many other great souls. And he established that the best predictor of behavior, we can never get rid of this factor. It's almost always the best predictor. It's simply, do you feel you can change the outcome? Do you have self-efficacy? And if it's something like climate, do you have collective efficacy? Can you see that there's a group that you're part of that has some hope of creating change? And so I think working around building collective efficacy and making this, a dialogue in different groups. And, we've started climate centers here and there in, UC wide and at our university and within our, specific area. I mean, we all have ways to raise awareness and have these discussions and see what we can do in our own areas. So really, rather than thinking of an individual level change, more to social and systems changes. And that does come down to still us working together. So I'd mentioned I was working on carbon footprint. I scrapped that. And probably some of you were shaking your head when you heard that was my outcome. But, that's the first go-to as a behavioral scientist. Let's reduce your own personal carbon footprint. But actually, while we all do need to still work on that, it's still important. It is especially important for us to actually shift toward the mindset of understanding we are all part of the problem. Our mind, we're all colluding with this way that we're extracting from the earth and using energy. And as Rinpoche said, consuming. And so how do we get out of that? I mean, it really is a revolution that we need, but we can, and we may get there the hard way, or we may, do all we can to be part of this tipping point that we already are part of.
Thank you. I love that you kind of go into the harder aspects of these conversations and you continue to lift up the expansion of hope and those personal behavior changes as a way to, rectify that hardness.
And I'll just say, I do think that researchers have an important role. I appreciate the chat saying that article was quite controversial to say, we're on strike. Just evaluating how we change things. And one of the most powerful ways to create change is to show what is possible, to have an exemplar and a proof of concept. And so as an example of, trying to build onto what I'm already doing is we took out soda out of our university and we showed that it improved health and reduced fat. And then we went on to say, did it save healthcare costs money? Yes. Did it save plastic bottles? Did it actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And it did. So we have all these papers. And what happens when you have a proof of concept and you show you can do this? 100 hospitals have had soda bans now. And so now we're on to 10 hospitals. Can we get rid of processed food and meat? So these are ways to build onto what you're already doing, this kind of healthcare systems change, and evaluate it, but make the case about climate. And so that's just one example.
Thanks, Alyssa. And Rinpoche, we know, just even with what Alyssa just shared, that there's such a range of coping strategies to deal with climate change. And you both have talked about the breath and how that is deeply connected to, healing this process. So I'm wondering, Rinpoche, if you could maybe share the concept of the 5 elements practice and lead us today in a grounding, given everything we've just talked about in this unpredictable future.
Yeah, so in ancient tradition, in Tibetan tradition, we have a very kind of rich knowledge and practices about 5 elements, and 5 element, outer 5 element like earth, water, fire, air, space, the outer element. The inner element is the like our flesh, the blood, the breath, the mind, the heat in the body. And so it's always the innermost aspect of the element will be more the human emotions, like feeling grounded. You know, this is something. What do you do to be grounded? Probably sometimes we make so many other people unground other people to feel grounded, or do the opposite work, right? So uh, feeling grounded or feeling full, feeling well, feeling peace, feeling flexible. These are very emotional sense of the inner elements. So these deep aspect of human emotions, they're connected with the elements, with our physical dimension of 5 elements. These physical dimension of 5 elements are more connected with the outer 5 elements. So the practices are very much how to internalize the element from gross to intermediate to more subtle aspect of elements, or to how to externalize, awakening your mind from the deep consciousness to experiencing of emotions and thoughts, and to act out in the world. Like when we're talking about the climate actions, I mean, action uh, needed to come from a place of stillness, a wakefulness. Most of our situation, I think the problem in the world today is many actions are coming from the, what I call it, pain identity. It's coming out of pain. It's coming out of distress. It's coming out of anger. It's coming out of hopelessness. It's not coming out from this sense of creative potentiality. It's not coming out of sense of fullness and fire and hope. It's not coming out of coming from some sense of clarity and skill and planning strategies, and it's not coming out something like that. It's coming out a kind of very messy place, and then the action what coming out is not also very useful. So anyway, so that I will guide a short meditation here, and this is also coming out of a book that I wrote called Healing with Form, Energy, and Light, which is basically whole discussion, knowledge, practices about 5 elements. So can I guide now? Okay. So bring your full attention to your place, the sacred land where you are, the sacred elements around you where you are. Feel the earth where you're sitting. Feel the air, what you're breathing. Feel that space where you are. And feel sense of warmth in the environment where you are. And for a moment, bring your attention to your body, the awareness of your body. Feel the stillness in your body. Be aware of the stillness of your body and allow yourself fully grounded, centered in that stillness of your body for a moment. And be aware of the silence of your speech, silence within, silence around you. and feel the deep sense of peace in that inner silence. And bring your attention to your heart. Feel the spaciousness, openness. So as we rest into the stillness, silence, and spaciousness, ground yourself, allow yourself, rest fully in this stillness, silence, and spaciousness. Now, bring awareness to the earth element, the sacred earth element, the places that you know, the mountain, the grounds, sacred lands that you know, you're aware of, you admire. Just be aware of it, see them, feel them. The groundingness, the grounded quality of the earth. See them, feel them, breathe through them, bring that, the essence of earth element as you inhale. Allow that energy to come in you and integrate in your body, feel that in your body. So breathing the sacred earth that you're familiar and breathing in and integrating with your body. Continue that. So connecting with sacred land outside, with seeing, feeling, breathing in and bringing in your body, feeling integration, feeling oneness. Just feel that. Now we go to the second element, water element, sacred water element. Same way, from that deep inner stillness, inner silence, inner spaciousness, from that place, bring awareness, a sacred water, sacred lake, sacred ocean, sacred waterfall. The images that you know, you feel, bring that into a conscious, into awareness. See them, feel them, and breathe that essence of element water in and allow it to integrate in your bloodstreams. Allow it to heal your body, your circulation, your blood. To the breath, so breathe in, integrate, become one, breathe out, and breathe in again, continue. Fire element, the sacred fire element, from that deep place of inner stillness, silence, spaciousness. Be aware of the sacred fire element outside, like a volcanic mountains, the sun, the fire, that you know, you feel you have connection with. See them, feel them, and breathe the energy, the essence of the fire as a pure energy, and bring in your body, in your heat in your body, the warmth in your body. Feel that integration, feel that oneness with the element. Fourth, the wind element, the sacred wind element. Once again, refresh that deep inner stillness, inner silence, inner spaciousness. Make sure you're still there. From that place, bring awareness, the sacred wind. Imagine and feel, bring into awareness the wind element, the sacred wind element, wherever you know the strong wind, fresh wind. And breathe in those outer sacred wind element through your breath to inner subtle winds, or all the different pranic pranas that we talk about, wisdom pranas. Just breathe in and integrate that with the inner wind element, the breath. And allow each of these elements, energy of the element, to heal our body, our emotion, our mind. Breathe in continuously, at least 3 times with full awareness. The last element, the sky, the space, the sacred space. Just imagine like crystal clear sky in a desert. Just see it and feel it and breathe in that sacred energy of the sacred space. Bring in directly into your heart, into your mind, and feel that's expanding. Your heart is opening your heart. It's opening your sense of self. And breathe in and feel more and more openness in that deep openness, spaciousness. Just feel for a moment a sense of completeness to each of these elements: sacred earth, sacred water, sacred fire, sacred air, sacred space element. From these purest energy of these elements, as we internalize in our body, feel the healing of our body. As we deeper internalize in our consciousness, feel it's healing all the wounds. And in a deep place, feel that it is awakening our sense of full and complete. There's more joy, there's more love, there's more peace, there's more fullness. Within ourselves. Ayang Rama Kang Dum Do, Ayang Rama Kang Dum Do, Ayang Rama Kang Dum Do. And feel that fullness, completeness, send out to everybody. Everybody who is feeling lack of sense of fullness, completeness. Give that sense of energy, lights of the elements, so that all are feeling more full, more complete, who they are, not what they are accumulating. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us that opportunity to experience this practice with you, Rinpoche. It's so helpful for our audience and for me personally to just have these clear and simple practices that we can access at any time, like the breath, like that connection in nature. So we've talked a lot about the causality of this conversation and this topic. And now I think it's really important to shift to, some of the personal action steps that you feel our audience can take. And I think what I'm seeing a lot in the chat is questions or prompts around resilience and stamina and how do we maintain this capacity to do this work, and Alyssa, at a recent Mind and Life event, you spoke with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, about the importance of hope and courage. And how do you personally feel that we should fight hopelessness and build this emotional stamina around hope and courage that can lead to action? Specifically, Laurentu said something to the effect of, how do we manage with a system that feeds itself by itself? How do we stop feeding greed and increase that resilience with those who are not honestly making these changes? So how do we maintain this emotional stamina to lead to action?
It's such a great question, and it's worth remembering what His Holiness goes to. And as well as Rinpoche, we heard it again here today. We do not control outcomes. Looking at models and data and saying, what are the chances, that we're not going to destroy all of humanity? This is not our job, to try to predict and control and decide, do we have hope or not? But rather back to these universal values, which is compassion, from the individual level to compassion in our policies, in our government. And of course, it has to start at the individual level. But the other option is anger and hopelessness. And so I would love to, I have a lot of thoughts about anger, about the good and the bad. And I would love to hear also from Rinpoche about anger. And I'll just say, activism, there is fierce compassion. We see, extremely exciting movements like Extinction Rebellion in the UK, which is now also global. People doing nonviolent protests. And of course, we have the, phenomenal example of Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Schools strikes, which has also spread. So there's anger behind these movements, and people risk personal consequences in these nonviolent protests for the greater good. And so it's such a deep form of compassion. And it hurts. It's hard to hold anger. It's hard to, we should all be outraged, not just concerned. It's hard to feel that and hold that. And so how do we, what role does anger have in your experience of climate, and how can you use that constructively is a big question for me. And we have lots of examples of, activism with burnout. They go together. You can't do it alone. And, angry activism over time is not sustainable. So what is sustainable? And so I think turning back to the regenerative fuel of purpose and love, and that we can be activists for love. We can be loving activists instead of angry activists. And that means that we're doing this out of love for humanity and nature and for each other. And, maybe in addition, we focus on and be angry to try to change some of the, clear, direct perpetrators. So there is a role for anger, but I think I am trying to shift toward more positive energy. People don't want to talk to me anymore about climate in my world, who have been exhausted by my wanting to talk about it, because you can't just keep focusing on the problems. Right. You want to really focus on just do the work. Don't ask, do you have hope? Just do the work. So anger can burn us out quickly.
So Rinpoche, we know that, destructive emotions such as anger and resentment have this capacity to divide our planet further. So what are the simple solutions that you can share that, we can express these emotions more positively?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how simple that is, but but just in the context of Buddhism generally, like when you look at the iconography, Buddhist iconography, there's these wrathful deities, with many heads and many arms and many weapons and very horrifying image. So what it says is that these wrathful deities, they are deities, they are enlightened beings, because not how they look, they don't look like very enlightened or very peaceful, or even not very kind, but they are very peaceful, they are very kind, they are very loving, but they are who they are is their truth. But what they're appearing is they're trying to make some changes in circumstances, because something needed to be taken away from the scene. We need to be even destroyed. Or I mean, people go for war in a sense of imminent threat, excuse, right? So some situations, something needed to be happen. But where it's happening, I think that's more important question, is what we are talking about. If it's happening from that emptiness, that pain, that anger, this, and then outcome will be not a very good one, because it came from wrong place, in a wrong energy, in a wrong action, in a wrong timing, in a wrong and wrong and wrong. You cannot expect something right things to come out. And I think so. Anger definitely have a very good place, and when this has that energy, and one of the good, I mean, you can have to make maybe many pieces of anger, trying to different layers of anger. But one of the good thing about anger, it does it. It does not pull back. It takes action.
Yeah.
But this ability to take action, I think it matters, because we cannot just think and plan. We need to take actions. It can be really big scale. It can be very small scale. As I was talking, just decided to not shop more. That's very good action. Or decided to not eat more. It's a very simple good. I mean, a friend of mine, he is a scientist. He told me how much, how much cup of coffee impacts the environment, and it's scary, So if you're calculating all the things for what it goes into that cup of coffee, it's scary. So, but I mean, it's not a cup of coffee. You can enjoy your cup of coffee, but so many other stuff we put in our body, would we go out and do things not necessary. So action is on an ordinary, on a simple level. I feel personally, is for me is just trying to keep life more simple. Simplifier. See things that you can feel the fullness and really enjoy more the nature and the environment without destroying it as it is, and feeling more fullness who you are. So I think anger definitely have a place, and the important part of the anger, I feel, this ability to take action. But when it's coming out of purely as an anger, destructive anger, then it can be dangerous also. So I guess it's really a question about, to see where it's coming from, what energy is coming out, what action is taking place, and where it's targeted to. And these things will define the outcome of the anger. Mother, I mean, as a parenting, talk about thinking about the parenting. I mean, I know, like I'm as a parent, I always question about that. Is it a weakness of parent, or is it a compassion of parent? There's the differences. The weakness of parents, they allow children to do anything they want to do. That's a weakness. They said, oh, it's okay. I love my children. But that's weakness. That's not a love. That's not compassion. When you allow to do them, let them do anything what they wanted to do, it's not a kindness. It's a fear sometimes. They're afraid of the children. But you don't want to be abusive to your children any means either. You want it to be very strong. So how you can be good parents with having very strong rules, with no compromising, but never shaking away from the care and love to your children. Nothing different. We know very well as a parent, if we can live life like that toward the environment, toward life that we live, I think it will be fine. You can have anger, and anger can have a good place, but it will never destroy anybody. It will make somebody grow.
Love that. John put in the chat this quote: can you be patient till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain motionless till the right action arises on itself? Which I think is really very similar to what you just shared.
Of course, sometimes, when we, one thing as a meditation teacher, I always tell people that, action is very important. If living life is very important. Living life fully is very important. Expressing your full emotion is very important. If you're not doing any of those things, you don't have a life.
Yeah.
So, but when it comes out in the wrong time, with the wrong energy from wrong place, you can pause.
Yeah.
You don't have to stop. You can be still, not act, be silent, not talk, be spacious, not decide, and give a space and breathe in from those three places for a moment. And the next moment you go back, it's a different action will come out, different voice will come out, different decision will come out. So ability to pause and go back to the source and find more options and possibility, that's everyday's behavior that we need to learn.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Mm.
I wish we could keep talking forever, but I want to give our audience a chance to come up. Hopefully, some folks will be inspired to raise their hand in the features here. You can raise your hand and we'll bring you up live to ask your question. If nobody raises their hand, I have plenty of questions to pull from that we've been pulling from the chat. But before we do that, I'm going to maybe give those who wish to raise their hand and come up a minute to get prepared. And I'll close with maybe this final question. It's, Rinpoche, Alyssa, he just said, like, action is important. The simplicity is really important. And the last time you and I chatted, you said, you cannot do everything, but don't do nothing. Each of us has the capacity to hold this sphere of influence. So what are the ways that each of us can develop this sphere into a living, growing organism that positively can impact our planet?
Shankari, did you want us to answer that now or after the Q&A?
Yeah, please. And then I think we have somebody who can come up live. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I loved what Rinpoche said about live fully in all of these ways, including contemplative time to, as a fundamental. This is where wisdom and love comes from. And so what it made me think of two things. One is this idea that we don't always have, but we could, which is, if the purpose of life to live fully with purpose, to reduce suffering, to contribute back to the earth, if this is part of the purpose of life, we are the luckiest generation ever, because our actions now have phenomenal weight to determine the future generations. And so what is a better way to live fully than to, be doing something in our lane for reducing suffering and for the future generations. And it's a way of showing gratitude and, maybe duty to our past generations as well. This is what we can pass on. So that makes it all our feelings of I'm only one, but yet I am one and I can do something. That is the best thing we can do, is to choose something that we think is meaningful. Don't say, is it going to solve the climate crisis? But in the model of social quantum change, there's non-local change happening, and what you do is affecting those around you emotionally or inspirationally or role modeling, but it's also affecting things in other places in the world that we can't know about, we can't measure. But this is how the non-local world works. So I loved that, thinking about, what does it mean to live fully right now? We're not prepared to live with a threat of, the extinction of humanity. Why should we be able to live well and fully? Well, actually, we are full, and we have each other, and we can do our best. And so I would say, plant, a quote from Martin Luther King, if I had one day to live, I would still plant a seed. And so that's what we can do. And so to address your question of, what is the advice moving forward, or one thing to do, I think, realizing that we have this amazing opportunity in our one little life, and we can only do what we can do, but it matters what we decide to do.
And build joy into that too, I think is so important, and use that as a strategy to manage the day-to-day stressors that we face.
Right. And there, I think the exemplars come up again. There's exemplars of, look at what this country did, Costa Rica, or, you know, what this hospital did. But then there's the exemplars of how people live with suffering and adversity and loss with such joy, like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and of course, His Holiness.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm going to ask Mira Kochar to come up. A quick question from Mira. If we can keep it brief, we're almost out of time here. Mira, are you able to join us? Hi, Mira, we can hear you if you want to go ahead and start your question.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry. So I have a question about how we can engage youth more in the mindful climate action, because I'm not aware of who all is here, but I doubt that many college students and even younger are here. And the only reason I was aware of this Zoom is because my professor recommended it to me based off of my interests. But when I want to talk about mindfulness to, you know, my friends in college, I'm a college freshman, many people simply aren't interested because they don't feel connected to that lifestyle, and especially in college where there's a big stress culture and I think there's huge consumerism. How can we make them involved in the mindful movement?
And I'll leave this open to you, Alyssa, and Rinpoche to answer as you'd like.
I'll let Rinpoche answer first.
Yeah, I guess, you know, as you pointing out about consumerism, you know, consuming, this is the world that we're consuming. And one of the reasons why we are consuming a lot of things is because this original question, I'm looking at this as a fundamental problem, is the lack of that emptiness, is the identity of pain and action of hopelessness, you know. So these places where many people are experiencing, is to fill that, to fill up that, is we have to consume, you know. That as a father, I can, you know, we have son, when he was growing up, we hardly bought any video games. We don't have any video games. We did not buy any, and he, of course, he compares with all the other kids have that, but it's okay. Other kids can have that. Other, you know, you don't have to have everything what other people have. We don't have video games and anything. It's the only thing first time ever last year during the pandemic, we gave him something because that's the only way he can communicate with his friends. So some sense, I think this talking about action, I guess for younger people, it's trying to see, I think it's difficult, right? For younger people, this is where they're young, that you know, but generally, I think maybe maybe the older people is the more problem because even they never grow up. So some sense that we are full, we are complete, everything is here, and we can really be resilient. We can be very active. We can be very creative. We can be very expressive. We can live full life. We can share full life. We have everything, as Elisa said. We're very lucky we are. And if we recognize that, then I think there's a chance. If we don't recognize that, then there's a problem there. Because yeah, if some sense of fullness, if you feel it, then there's no reason to go out and buy more or eat more or destroy more or accumulate more, because you do feel the fullness. And also, I think sometimes situations where people are down, people are depressed, people are lost. In those situations, even those situations, I think to find one thing. I mean, I always feel like that, you know, every day when you get up, do something. Do something, you know, something that you love. There must be something that you love, or talk with someone you love, or go out somewhere you will enjoy. Do something. Action, a positive action that you feel connected to. They protect you. They help you. They will let you pass the day comfortably. But if you don't do, something else will come there in that space, because it's an empty space and it's not fulfilled with good energy. The negative will come, demon will come right there. Negative thought will come right there. You will have rest of the day a very depressing day. So doing things in action and feeling from that place of fullness, I think I recommend that. You know, do things.
Yes. And I should add that Rinpoche, you and other spiritual leaders who embody this, loving, compassionate attitude and aren't reactive, that didn't come without a daily vow. We don't do that. We're missing that. I've been trying that on, thinking of Joanna Macy's vow and the Bodhisattva vow, and it's very powerful. And yes, the action matters, but starting off the day with the renewing the intention is something that I think non-religious Westerners, need to adapt in their own way. Create your own vow. It's so, we need that. It's hard to not get swept up in the rush of the day. Mira, my heart goes out to you, and I loved your question. And there are other young adults like you who are wanting to live an awakened life like you, and you need to find them. The sunrise movement is so important, and it's so hard. There's burnout, there's loneliness. People don't sustain the activism. The youth are most vulnerable during the pandemic and with climate distress. A recent survey showed 56% of youth feel that the humanity is doomed. We are really in trouble with that attitude. We're not going to put up a good fight and change things if we give into that. So I just want to say, keep up the good work and find your resilience group, your pod, your people. Can't go through this alone.
Yeah, thank you both. Normally at this point, I would ask, what is that one step, that one concrete insight, call to action that each of you want to share, but you both just shared them based on this conversation so beautifully. So I hope if anyone missed it, they have a chance to go back and watch the recording. But I want to invite our audience that's watching live, if you feel inspired, you want to put in the chat, what's something that's landing with you based on this conversation that we were so blessed to have with Rinpoche and Alyssa today. And I just want to thank you both so much once more. This is great. I'm so excited to have this conversation with both of you. And I'll just close with some short recap of this amazing conversation. Rinpoche began by reminding us that as humans, we have the tendency to look outside of ourselves for happiness, often in the form of material things. We learned that one of the best ways to fill the emptiness we feel is to reconnect to ourselves and to nature. Alyssa shared the important role that behavior change and shifting mindsets can play in addressing our climate crisis. She talked about the importance of collective efficacy and the role that each of us can play in contributing to the social tipping point that's already underway. And of course, we're all grateful to Rinpoche, who led us in a wonderful meditation to help us access nature's elements for our own self-healing. And we're going to close with just one more beautiful, brief meditation with Rinpoche in a few moments. But before we move into that meditation, I'm going to just give some quick announcements about our upcoming programs. So if you found today's topic on climate change inspiring, we encourage you to check out our upcoming online course, The Mind, the Human Earth Connection and the Climate Crisis, which evolved based on the Summer Research Institute, which Alyssa was a part of curating and crafting. So I'm sure she's really excited to see it come to life. This self-paced course begins on January 21st, and you can register through our website now. And we'll be gathering for our final episode of Inspiring Minds on Wednesday, February 23rd. I hope you'll join me for this heartfelt conversation that I'm going to be having with Pumla Gobido Matakazela, Aaron Stern, and poet Hawa Kasat on healing intergenerational trauma. And you can learn more about both these programs and sign up through the Mind and Life website. And again, we just want to thank you once more for joining us. Always a deep bow of appreciation to our Mind and Life team working behind the scenes, helping us hold this space, keeping all of our online programs going, as well as our full staff that is always a part of all of these curated programs that we put together. We look forward to being a part of and being in community with all of you in the coming new year. And we couldn't do this without the support of our Mind and Life community. So thank you once more. And Rinpoche, I'll hand it over to you to lead us in our closing meditation.
Thank you. So please, once again, bring your full attention to this moment, this place in your body, in the stillness, in the silence, in the spaciousness, and this sense of connection between all of us who are gathering here and everybody who is even not here, just this sense of connectedness and entire humanity. Feel the beauty, the power, the healing of that sense of connectedness to each other. Particularly people you are close to, who are around you, who you are frequently with, who you frequently talk with, or you hear, just this human connection. Feel that. Open your heart to that connection. From that deep place of stillness, just feel that I commit, we all commit to take actions, positive actions, full actions, whatever that we can individually and collectively to contribute more, taking care of the earth, healing of the earth, protecting the earth. Taking these actions on a very much on a personal level. By journey into the fullness, recognize that the fullness who I am, everything I need in my life, it's within me. I am it. The journey is to recognize that fully and share with others. So feeling that sense of completeness, peace, love, energy, feel that in your heart and that share that to the rest of the people, particularly that people you interact with in a full way, your family, friends, colleagues you work with, fully able to share that action, fire, drive, resilient. Thank you.